The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Nobody can benefit more from Friday's preseason game than Shedeur Sanders.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast.
We now know for a fact that Shedeur Sanders will be starting on Friday for the Cleveland Browns in Carolina. Kevin Stefanski confirming those reports on Tuesday that he would be the starting quarterback on Friday against the Panthers in their first preseason game. There were some more comments from Kevin Stefanski just in regards to his plans moving forward. Basically made it clear that it'll only be Shedeur Sanders and Tyler Huntley who even get a chance to play on Friday. They're putting Joe Flacco in bubble wrap, probably because they have 2 other quarterbacks who are hurt, and so they're trying to protect him. And then also, we know because those 2 quarterbacks are hurt, and Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel, they won't be playing. Kevin Stefanski also made it clear that he will not play most of the starters on Friday, and so that's notable as well. We'll get into some more of those things here coming up later in the show. But the first thing I wanted to hit on was just the fact that with knowing Shedeur Sanders is starting on Friday, first of all, this game could end up being the most watched preseason game of all time, at least the most watched Browns preseason game of all time. Because listen, Shedeur Sanders is without question a star across the NFL. And somebody who people are following this Browns team right now. I see it on the network as well, simply because Shedeur is on this team. And so there are going to be a lot of people tuned in and glued to their TVs to see Shedeur Sanders make this start in the first preseason game. And what's going to be interesting is because, as I found out from Julian Council yesterday, who hosts Locked On Panthers here at the network, he told me flat out that that Canales, their head coach, has made it clear that they want to start these starters for, I think he actually clarified today it was going to be about 12 snaps, 12 plays. And so it will be Shedeur Sanders against the Panthers first team defense. It will be the Panthers first team offense against the Browns mixed and matched first team / second team defense. So we'll see what all that kind of looks like. But Shedeur Sanders is going to get a real opportunity here to go up against an NFL caliber, an NFL starting defense on Friday when this game opens up. And so, listen, I don't know if there's anybody, and I understand this team has a lot of rookies on it. This team certainly has guys who are vying for roster spots, and that's what the preseason ultimately is about, right? Is the guys on the back end of the roster trying to prove on tape and put in a game setting that they deserve a spot on this roster, and sort of those guys in the bubble get a chance to, find a place or find a home if they earn that spot. So I'm not saying those guys don't have something to earn, or that there aren't other players with something at stake here in the grand scheme of things as they try to, make an NFL roster. But when it comes to this Browns team, there isn't a player on the roster with more to gain from Friday's game than Shedeur Sanders. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen the stuff at practice. We've seen the rep distribution. We know he hasn't taken reps with the ones to this point, but him getting a chance to go out there in a live setting and go up against the first team defense of another team is going to be the best chance he gets to prove, hey, time to give me more reps, time to let me run with the ones, time to really show you what I can do. And if he does it, the outside part of it, the outside noise is going to be louder than ever for Shedeur Sanders to see more time and take more reps. But I think internally they're going to have to start to sort of pivot their thought process if he really looks great against especially that first defense for the Panthers, and he's out there just balling. And there's another thing too, there's one thing that I don't know a lot of people have accounted for. I know the diehard Shedeur fans who are mostly here because of Shedeur Sanders or following this team because of Shedeur Sanders. I know you guys know this already. I certainly know this from watching his tape a lot and watching a lot of those Colorado games last year. Shedeur has that gamer persona in him where basically what I'm getting at is when the lights turn on, when the lights are their brightest, when you're out there on the field and you're expected to go make plays. He performs. He puts on a show. And he kind of alluded to that actually on Monday before practice when he met with the media, because he said, like, somebody asked him, like, what are you expecting from the preseason game? Or a question along those lines. And he basically said, like, I mean, you saw me in college, you know what I can do. It's going to look like that. And that's the thing that I think should have everybody excited, because they're all like, I understand, the practice reps, they show you something. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's a piece of the puzzle. In the meeting room, film study stuff and learning the playbook, that stuff absolutely matters as well. It's part of the puzzle. But there's always one thing, and this isn't just Shedeur, but like across the league, there's always one thing that you sometimes can't account for with a player. And that's their ability to, when the lights are on, when they're out there on the field, when they're playing in a game setting, what do? And some guys can just rise to this different occasion, even if the practice tape or the practice hasn't, the practice reps haven't been great. And I'm not saying, by the way, that they've been bad for Shedeur. I'm just saying, like, in other instances, sometimes there's guys who, like, practice isn't the setting for them, but when they're out there on the field, they just turn it up a notch, and there's just something about it, and they relish that feeling. And that's what Shedeur has. He is a gamer. He's a guy that when the lights are the brightest, when he's out on that, the field is his stage, and it's the stage for all these players. But for Shedeur, like, there's something about that environment of just being on the field that brings out the best in him. And I think we saw that certainly in college. I think some of that probably comes from his dad, right? Like, growing up as the son of Deion Sanders, Deion was like that. Deion was a show within the show that is football. And I think he thrives in that environment the same way that his dad did. And so you can't account for that in practice. You can't account for that in just like watching, tape in the film room and all that. It just kind of has to happen naturally, organically, when you put them out in those situations on the field. And so I'm excited to see that element of Shedeur's game come out of him, hopefully on Friday, and allow him to have success that I'm anticipating he's going to have. And if he does that, if he balls out, I mean, it's going to be louder than ever for Shedeur to see even more reps and get even more of a fair shake in this competition. And I do think the Browns still want to be patient with him. They don't want to put him out there too soon. And I think I think to a degree, I think that's okay, because this organization has messed up a lot of quarterbacks by putting them out there too soon. But Shedeur can really force the issue if he goes out and balls on Friday, especially against the Panthers' first team defense for what Dave Canales is saying is going to be like 12 reps or so, or 12 snaps or so. That's going to be a key thing here. And I don't know that enough people have accounted for the fact that Shedeur has that gamer mentality about him. And that could just mean that, like, on those stages, he's going to be better than even what he's looked like in practice. And that's going to make it undeniable. That stuff, like the preseason tape stuff, is going to, it's another piece of the puzzle. And sometimes guys just thrive in those environments. I think Shedeur fits that billing. And I think we'll see that from him on Friday. So, as I said, I don't know if there's a single player that has more to gain from playing in Friday's preseason game and making a name for themselves and showing what they can do than Shedeur Sanders himself.
We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. With Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price, guaranteed.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast.
Josh McDaniels and Drake May cooked against Washington in the first joint practice of 2025. We've talked about this joint practice since we got the camp schedule. This was one of those dates that you circle on the calendar saying it's a pretty big day. It is truly the first big test for this football team. And the offense, they passed that test. Greg Bedard writing on the offense. Offense looked very sharp, especially in the red zone, which should be music to everybody's ears, given some of the struggles from May in the offense in the low red zone area. Red zone today, mostly really, really good. And as we go through what the offense did today, I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a joint practice. This is not a Super Bowl. We're not anointing the Patriots champions of any kind, but you do have to walk away feeling optimistic with the trajectory, especially for this offense. Let's start with May. He was good to very good during this practice against the Commanders. Mark Daniels of Mass Live posts, May starts practice going 10 of 12 against Washington starters. You have Evan Lazar posting, May was feeling it, looking off coverage, off platform throws, etc. Back to Bedard. Outside of the interception, which happened late in practice, we'll get to that, he was very sharp. Speaking of May, finding open receivers all over the field. For team periods, I want you to absorb this. For team periods, May was 14 of 20, but that included drops from Travion Henderson, and Pop Douglas. So he should have really been 16 of 20 in team periods. Drake May had not one, not two, but three passing touchdowns. He had a scrambling touchdown. He did take one sack and again had that interception on his final drive. But what we are seeing from May on the balance of this camp is a comfortable Drake May, is a confident Drake May, is a May that has chemistry with his wide receivers and a quarterback that looks decisive. Now, as far as that late interception in practice, he had Pop Douglas wide open, tried to get it to Pop. Bobby Wagner got his hand on it at the second level, tipped it up, and it was picked. Similar to what happened in the scrimmage with May. So I know Bedard kind of threw out the idea of May changing his arm angle on those kinds of passes, but it was a tip pass by Bobby Wagner, and then that led to the interception. But overall, don't get it twisted. Drake May was good to very good in this joint practice. He wasn't the only one. The wide receivers showed up. Yeah, I didn't make a mistake when I just said that. I know it's hard to believe being a Patriots fan and watching that position for the past couple of years, but the wide receivers during this joint practice, they showed up, they made plays. And I would point out as well, Stephon Diggs was late to this practice, not sure why, but he was late to the practice. He did participate in 7-on-7s. We'll see if he's out there on Friday night in the preseason game. But a lot of the damage, pretty much all of the damage, was done by receivers not with the last name Diggs, which to me is a great note. It's pivotal that you're getting production in this kind of situation when Diggs is not out there consistently for this joint practice. And what we saw from the receivers today, according to all reports, was promise. Pop Douglas continues to be a stud. I know I said a moment ago that he dropped the pass, but really, I mean, he has been outstanding. He's been outstanding. It continued during this joint practice. Taylor Kyles of CLNS, he called Pop Douglas today unguardable. And you could say that about Pop throughout most of this camp. 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, scrimmages, 1-on-1s, doesn't matter. Pop Douglas keeps getting open over and over and over again. And how about Kayshon Boutte? Kayshon Boutte has shown the consistency that we were all hoping that he would somehow find. He has shown that throughout this camp so far. I think that outside of Mac Hollins being the veteran and signing in the offseason and the history between Hollins and McDaniels, if you're just looking at this, receiver versus receiver, Kayshon Boutte right now is the third receiver on this team. Diggs, Douglas, then Boutte. That's how it would be if all things were equal. And he might be the third receiver on this team when all is said and done, when we are ready for week 1 against the Raiders. But Kayshon Boutte continues to show up, continues to make plays at practice in a variety of ways. Evan Lazar, May to Boutte on a back shoulder fade from the high red zone. for 6. So a touchdown catch by Booty. Another one, back shoulder. What's that tell you? Chemistry. Even more important about Booty, here's what Drake May said post-practice. This was transcribed by Los Talk Pats on Twitter. Quote, "Coach keeps saying you do the right thing and you keep doing it over and over. I can trust you. It's comforting knowing that Booty's going to be in the right spot and it's my job to give him a chance," unquote. Booty is showing that consistency. He is showing some maturity for sure. And he has earned the trust of Drake May. Continues to have a good camp, but it didn't stop there. Javon Baker, who really has been defined by his inconsistencies. We've discussed that. Well, over the past week or so, he is showing that consistency. You can pretty much count on Baker to make at least one, if not multiple, good plays in a practice. And he showed up at the joint practice, caught a goal line slant, according to Evan Lazar, for a touchdown from Joshua Dobbs. And as Lazar put it, Baker's roster push continues, and it does. Right now, Javon Baker is your 6th receiver, I would say. If you are bringing 6 out of camp, Baker is the 6th guy. And then you had Mac Hollins, and he had an impact. Bedard wrote about Hollins, showed why the Patriots signed him as a big red zone target. He caught 4 of 5 passes from May and a touchdown. Mark Daniels wrote that Hollins just hauled in a really nice 25-yard touchdown from Dobbs. And beyond those guys, Efton Chisholm had 4 or 5 catches in this practice. Really the only receiver that you'd be looking for that didn't do much, according to what I read and heard, was Jalen Polk. Not much written about him, and he might be losing ground. He's definitely lost ground to Baker, and he might have lost ground during this joint practice to Efton Chisholm. How about the offensive line? Good news. Will Campbell, the trends continue, and the trend has been good in team, good with run blocking, some wins and losses with the one-on-ones. And that's what we saw during the joint practice. Chris Mason from Mass Live. Campbell held up well in pass pro during the first 11-on-11 period. Looked just fine. Bedard on Campbell. Campbell mostly held his own. Played very well in the 11-on-11s, including a big block on Dietrich Wise to spring a big Travion Henderson run. He didn't give up a pressure in team periods that I could see. Not one pressure. One-on-ones were a mixed bag in 3 reps against Wise. So mostly what Campbell's done throughout this camp. He has looked good. When it comes to 11-on-11s, those team drills, he's doing well. One-on-ones, he loses here and there. Run blocking, doing a good job. Nothing alarming so far. No matter what anybody's saying out there, don't listen to the noise. There's been nothing alarming about Will Campbell and his camp to this point. Wise was asked about Campbell, again, transcribed by Los Pats Talk. Quote, "He's really good at using his hands, very strong guy, has a very high ceiling. I faced tackles who have short arms before. It's all about the heart." And if you're wondering about Jared Wilson, he also had a good day. Bedard wrote, "Wilson looked really good against a good Commanders defensive tackle group in one-on-ones. Wilson beat Dorrance Armstrong and Cleveland Farrell. He had a draw against Deron Payne." So if you're looking at that young left side of the offensive line, Campbell solid, Wilson maybe even more than solid. And it just didn't stop there because the rest of the offensive line, breaking news, was not a dumpster fire. Nothing crazy happened. Morgan Moses, by the way, was out. Vrabel said he's dealing with something. But the offensive line, if you were wondering, they held it together during their first big test at this joint practice, much like the wide receivers and Drake May. They passed. They passed that test.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first order. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first order.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast.
The Tampa Bay Buccaneers have signed quarterback Teddy Bridgewater to a one-year deal. Now, Baker Mayfield returned to practice on Tuesday, but before that, the Bucs only had about half of their quarterbacks available over the last couple of practices because of injury. Now, they add a seasoned veteran with a ton of experience into the room to help back up Baker Mayfield. Todd Bowles was asked about the signing and said, quote, "He brings us a wealth of experience at that spot. Obviously, we don't have it. Kyle has been here a few years, but he hasn't really played. Obviously, we have the new guy just coming in." He's referring to Connor Bazelak, the undrafted rookie. But so we need the extra arm. We think we need some experience in that room. The more experience, the better. I believe he can help if he's here. He's definitely a guy that can do that. He's been in some of the same systems as Baker has been in. He has a wealth of knowledge from a coaching standpoint as well as a playing standpoint. He can't do anything but help, end quote. Jason Light was also asked about it, saying, quote, "We've talked about this actually over a couple of weeks, maybe even over the summer. We had some discussions about it, that it would be a nice addition for the room, good for Baker. He's an experienced guy, obviously very smart, hell of a high school coach, hell of a coach in general, but just a good addition to have that wealth of experience there. We still have preseason games to play and all that, but right now Kyle is our backup. That's the intention, and that's what we're hoping for. But yeah, everybody's competing," end quote. All right, here's where I think it gets interesting, because at this stage, I don't care who they say the backup is. I think they don't make this signing unless they feel they need to upgrade the backup quarterback. That's no disrespect to Trask, but I've said it for a few years that I didn't think he was going to be anything more than a career backup anyway, after I had more than a couple of opportunities to watch him up close. And I think Baker missing some practices and Trask being on, a one-year deal basically made him vulnerable when they watched him out there with the first team offense. I think that's kind of what sped this along a little bit. Yeah, you can have discussions about all kinds of guys. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But they made this move, and they made it for a reason. Here's the way I look at it. God forbid Baker goes down and misses a game or two. Let's say he gets banged up. It's his ankle or his shoulder or something. Nothing serious, but it's bad enough that he's going to miss 2 games. And let's put a little bit more on the line. Let's say it's 2 games in late November, early December. Crunch time, where every game can mean the difference between making or missing the playoffs. Which quarterback are you going to trust to go out there and get a couple of wins against teams like the Cardinals and Saints? Kyle Trask, who's entering his 5th season and has thrown 11 career passes? Or Teddy Bridgewater, who was in Miami with Grizzard, has started over 60 games as well as a playoff game, has completed over 66% of his career passes, has 75 career touchdowns and only 47 career interceptions. He's been a starter. He's backed up Breeze. He's backed up Goff. That's not a guy that's going to take a backseat to Kyle Trask. I'm sorry, but he's not. They don't sign this level of player just because they needed an extra arm at camp. I think ultimately the coaches and Jason Light didn't like what they saw over the last couple of days with Trask at the helm, and they thought, you know what, we have a real shot at winning it all. And if Baker goes down for any length of time, our season goes with him. So they looked to upgrade. They revisited those conversations that they had, and they said, we need to pull the trigger on this. Now, if Baker goes down for extended time, and I'm talking a major injury that takes him out for half of the year or more, then the Bucs are cooked anyway. But let's not forget that, this was a situation that Bridgewater was in back in 2019. He had to step in for Drew Brees, and he went 5-0 with 9 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He completed almost 70% of his passes on his way to being one of the top finalists for the comeback player of the year. If you just wanted an extra arm or someone to get through, the next couple of weeks while these guys deal with injuries, you go get Jeff Driscoll or Jake Fromm or CJ Beathard or you get an undrafted free agent. You don't pluck a guy away from being a head football coach at a high school that was just in the league last year with the Lions as their number 2. You don't bring that guy in who played for your offensive coordinator a few years ago, who played for your defensive line coach when he was the head coach at Louisville. This was a signing that was made because Teddie is a player, I think, that this coaching staff feels that if they need someone to go out at the quarterback position and win 1 or 2 games this season, they have more faith in him to do it than they do Kyle Trask. And I hate to pile on and try to make it seem like I don't like Trask. I do. He's a great dude. But I have very little confidence that he can step into a regular season game and steal a win with his experience. There is nothing that Teddy B hasn't seen or hasn't been through in this league. There's nothing that's going to surprise him at this stage of his career. He can go on the road against the Rams and steal you that game. Is anyone going to have that kind of faith in Kyle Trask? No. And it's not his fault that he doesn't have experience. He backed up Tom Brady, and then he backed up Baker Mayfield. He was never going to win that competition a few years ago, and we all made fun of the idea that it was a competition, when they announced it, because it wasn't. We knew from day one Baker Mayfield was going to be the starting quarterback. There wasn't really a market for Trask in free agency. The Bucs wanted him back because of his familiarity, so they agreed to a 1-year deal. But it's 1 year with $1.3 million guaranteed and a max value of $2.7 million. That doesn't exactly scream untouchable. Now, there's no word as of yet what Bridgewater's deal is outside of just 1 year, but I think that's also going to be really telling. If he's getting more guaranteed money than Trask, then you know who the number 2 quarterback on this roster is going to be come week 1. It'll all work itself out throughout the rest of camp and in the preseason. I don't think we're going to see Teddy this weekend against the Titans, but we might, depending on how quickly he takes to the offense. But this was done in order to have a better, more experienced backup for Baker, someone that has proven that they can win games in this league. This was a move, like Jason said, that they've talked about for weeks. That's long before these injuries happened. That's long before they actually needed another arm. This was them preparing themselves to bring in a player that's going to help the team as a whole. It's a move that's going to help Baker Mayfield in that quarterback room, in those film studies, on that sideline. And he's going to be able to step up if called upon.